Welcome to the Pandora's Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. I am your host, Asher. As you settle in for the ride, we are thrilled to introduce our special guest, Faye Lawands. Faye is no ordinary expert. She's a trauma-informed clinical hypnotherapist, stress response regulation expert, and nervous system specialist. Having faced and transcended 3 burnouts, Faye has transformed her struggles into a trove of healing wisdom. Her journey spanning 13 countries and marked by pivotal moments like her experience during the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 2006 has shaped her unique approach to managing internal conflicts. Today, Faye is not just focused on individual healing, but is on a grand mission to make the world a kinder, happier place. Her 3-step mental health blueprint is not just a healing tool, it's a pathway to finding inner peace, confidence, and control. So as we embark on this podcast journey with Faye, get ready to dive into a story of resilience, healing, and the pursuit of happiness. Faye, you're so welcome here today to the podcast.
It's so nice to be with you, Asher. Good morning from New Zealand.
Good morning from New Zealand. Yeah, you are in the future, my friend, all the way.
We totally are. I'm coming to you from the future, and I'm here to tell you it's a very nice future. It's a very bright future.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I haven't been to New Zealand, by the way. That's another place that I have to go and put on my list.
Yes.
Wow. How is it there, by the way, for you?
It's good. It's good, quite impacted post-COVID like most parts of the world. But life in New Zealand is pretty unique. And we were talking before we went live about the real importance of the work-life balance here in New Zealand. By law, all employees need to have 4 weeks are entitled to 4 weeks paid vacation. Mm-hmm. And in many cases, you have 5 weeks paid vacation. In most cases, when the workday ends. Not only do people leave, but they're encouraged to leave by their supervisors and their bosses. And, I lived and worked in the States and in Canada for many, many years. And I remember, this was back in the 90s, and I remember it was kind of like a badge of honor to be at work late and to take work home with you and to come back to work on weekends. And I totally, wrapped myself into that identity as well, which was one of the reasons why I eventually burnt out. But here, by contrast, in New Zealand, this stuff doesn't happen. It's a badge of honor that you actually have things to do on weekends, that you're involved in outdoor activities, that you have a thriving family life, that you have a thriving social life. And these are the things that are actually encouraged here, like culturally encouraged and conditioned into people, which is quite beautiful, actually. I think this is one of the reasons that makes this country quite a beautiful place to spend time in. And why I think a lot of Westerners are really attracted to the lifestyle here, because it has all of the, similar value system and kind of similar lifestyle to many places in the West, but with this real premium placed on the work-life balance. And also, the climate here is quite mild compared to many other places in the West. Even though it can get, quite cold in the winter, and there are places where it snows. For the most part, the weather is quite mild. And, some people say, not me, because I don't like the cold weather, that you can wear shorts year round here in New Zealand. I'm not sure about that. So the coldest that it gets here in Fahrenheit would be about 55 or so in most cities. So yeah, it's quite an attractive place to live, and it's quite small, So even though we're in the largest city, Auckland, the largest city with the largest infrastructure, the largest population, we're talking only a population of about 1 million, 1.5 million. So, it's quite compact. It's quite easy to get around. And it's quite a unique lifestyle here.
Very interesting. Wow, you have shared so much about New Zealand that I didn't know about. Wow, so anyone is listening right now, definitely New Zealand sounds like a place to go lay your rest and chill a little bit.
Yes, for sure. And there's gorgeous beaches here. You know, New Zealand is an island. Well, actually, it's made up of two islands. And there are so many gorgeous beaches that are very pristine.
Mm,
The population of New Zealand is only 5 million. So it's not a densely populated country. So there's vast expanses of land and beaches, like gorgeous beaches like you've never seen before. And the food here is also incredible, because it's quite, it's that clean green image that you have of New Zealand is quite true. It's, everything's like fresh here. Food is fresh. Vegetables are fresh. Fruit is fresh. So the food here, fish is fresh, lamb is fresh. So the food here has quite a higher quality than I think you find in most places in the world. Perhaps Australia would be comparable, but I am quite biased to the food and the cuisine culture here in New Zealand. You also have beautiful wines as well. It's a wine growing nation. So there's beautiful wines, and because it's a relatively new country, and because the wine making industry is quite a relatively modern industry, they actually experiment with wine blends in a way that maybe in France and in Europe, like in European countries, that they don't. So the wines here are incredible, beautiful wineries. I mean, really, you can never get bored here in New Zealand because there's so much variety. And so much to do.
wow. So here's where we're gonna start. I love we jumped off into your location and sitting in your location right now. You've been here probably, I don't know, a couple of years. So what would that, yeah, 9 years. Okay. So 9 years you've been there. So tell me about that question that I normally start off the podcast with. The big question you think about before you go to bed at night when you wake up in the morning, or the one that's drive you through life as you occupy the state of New Zealand.
Yeah. So actually, the thoughts that I think about first thing in the morning and last thing at night are the same, and they're driven by my commitment to A Course in Miracles. I started A Course in Miracles 95 days ago. And I have to say, and I don't know if you've heard of A Course in Miracles, but basically it's mind training. It's mind training to get you out of the negativity and to embrace a higher vibrational frequency and to embrace a higher consciousness. And it's basically a mind training to help us embrace Christ consciousness, which is the highest vibrational consciousness on this planet. It's all about love and forgiveness and acceptance and kindness. And while we hear a lot about this stuff, and there's so many modalities and so many therapies out there, to help us access and embody these positive emotions, I really have found that each of them to be quite lacking, but this Course in Miracles, the way it's structured, has been really quite remarkable in my own just quality of life experience. Even though I'm a therapist and, I work with mental training a lot. I mean, this is what I do day in, day out. I've found that the approach of A Course in Miracles is quite unique and quite different. And I know I'm ready for this now at this point in my life journey and at this point of like where the planet is right now. So every morning and every night, I think about one of the principles of A Course in Miracles, and every day they guide you to focus on one of these principles. And usually these principles have something to do with our wholeness, our oneness, our non-separation, our greatness. And I cannot begin to tell you how the quality of my day and the quality of my sleep has improved significantly since I start my day and end my day focused on one of these principles from A Course in Miracles. So that's how I start my morning, and that's how I end my day.
Well, I'm gonna go this morning then. Talk to me about this morning. What was that one for you then? Yeah, one principle.
I am one with my creator. And the thing is, the ideas are ideas that we've come across before. Like they're not nothing that we've never heard of before. But the way that it's structured is it helps you actually sit with the idea, reflect on it, and really start to feel it. because it's the feeling of it that's going to make the difference. I mean, do you know how many times I've actually heard this idea, that you're created in the image of God, or, you're whole, you're not broken. Like, we hear these ideas floated around all the time, but it's practicing those ideas and rehearsing those ideas that really starts creating the internal transformation towards more positivity, more expansiveness, and more light. And I don't know how much you know about A Course in Miracles, but I think what's one of the powerful ways that it's been structured and packaged is that the woman who wrote it, who put it together, she's a psychologist, and so she's quite she's well trained and quite fluent in the mind and psychological principles and how to rewire the mind and how to move away from negativity and negative toxic thinking. And she actually wrote this book by channeling. So she would just get visions and dreams, and she would find herself making her way to her typewriter, and actually it wasn't her who was actually writing it. She says that she thought somebody else was writing it for her. And I have to say, every single person every single person I've spoken to has done A Course in Miracles and stuck it out, talks about its incredible transformative power, because it is one practice a day. So you have to commit to it for 365 days.
Mm-hmm.
It's not for everyone, and it's not for everyone in a particular moment in time. So this is my third attempt at doing A Course in Miracles, because I've heard about it a lot. I mean, I've heard about it since the 90s, and certainly I wasn't ready for it in the 90s. In the 90s, when I first came to it, I think I did I got as far as day 3 and I checked it out, because it requires discipline. It requires intention. It requires you to put your critical thinking mind on the side. It requires you to open up to faith, and it requires you to be willing to surrender the ego mind and the overthinking mind. And the way that we've been conditioned in today's world, we're not really particularly ready to let go of, our ego thinking mind. We're not particularly inclined to lean into faith. We're not particularly inclined to surrender to something bigger than ourselves. We're not particularly inclined to that. But it does require you to be willing to do all of these things. So when I first came to it, like in the 90s, I certainly was nowhere in that mental space or emotional space or even like spiritual space to take it on. And then I came upon it again during the lockdowns. And also, I think I got up to like day 18. So I got a little bit farther with it, but certainly not far enough, and not far enough to really experience the transformation and the impact. And now I guess it's the right time. It's the right time in my journey, Asher. It's the right time, and just what's happening in the world, the way the world is ascending, that it's really landing. And it's something like I look forward every morning to what awaits me, what new power message or power thought awaits me, where can I focus my attention today? And I look forward to going to bed at night and having dreams of these incredibly expansive, elevated ideas, where, the quality of my dreams now are different. The quality of my sleep is different. And I wake up feeling completely different because of where my attention has gone first thing in the morning and last thing at night. And you don't need to do A Course in Miracles to have this type of, that quality of life, but really what we do first thing in the morning and last thing at night dramatically impacts our mental health and the quality of our life. And it's not like first thing in the morning as like first hour, or last thing at night, like last hour before you go to bed, although that's very important, but it's quite literally those moments, like those those key moments right after you wake, you open your eyes, and those key moments right before you close your eyes, when your brainwave frequency has slowed to such a space that you're in your subconscious and you're actually in your programmable mind. It's what are you doing and what are you thinking about and what thoughts and what emotions are occupying that space during your very programmable mind space that really is going to make all the difference in the quality of your life.
Okay. So I'm thinking about what you're saying, and oftentimes what happened to people is that for them to embrace any kind of new tools, something has to happen to them. Like something has to happen and like, oh my God, I need this thing. No, I can't do without it. So what happened to you that caused you to embrace this system? Like what happened?
The Course in Miracles, or what happened in my life for me to embrace actually taking my life seriously and taking my well-being seriously?
The latter.
The latter, yeah. Because really, I mean, that's a really, really good point, Asher, because you're absolutely right. We tend to, the way the human mind is wired, and the way we're conditioned to live our lives is we wait for a moment of crisis in order to take our lives seriously, right? And for some of us, we end up taking our lives seriously and taking radical responsibility. And for others, we end up inhabiting that negative space and casting blame at everything else and everyone else around us, blaming our conditioning, blaming our parents, blaming our exes, blaming our bosses, blaming our coworkers, blaming the world environment, blaming inflation, so on and so forth. I think you get my drift. And so in my case, what caused me to really take my life seriously and take my healing and my mental health seriously was my very first burnout, which happened now 16 years ago. When I was living on the beautiful, idyllic island of Curacao. I have a thing for beautiful island, as you can see.
I can see, yeah.
I actually grew up on another beautiful island in the Mediterranean called Cyprus. Anyway, so I had my first burnout in Curacao. And, here's something important to actually point out. Because a lot of people think that burnout has to do with your job or your to-do list or the juggling act or busyness. And yes, while, all of that stuff, if it's not kept in check, can rob you of your quality of life, that's not what it's going to drive you into a burnout, right? Burnout is about an internal nervous system state that goes into total shutdown mode because of an accumulation of emotional overwhelm and an accumulation of unresolved internal conflict. And so, I had my first burnout on a Caribbean island where people go to escape their troubles. Now, this is quite important because,
Trouble followed you there.
It totally follows you, because if you don't take care of your internal landscape, you can change your external landscape multiple times, but the internal conflicts and the internal turmoil will follow you from one place to the other. And when I had my first burnout, when I was in Curacao, I was living a party life. I was a party girl. Curacao was incredible. I was literally was living where other people go to vacation. And my life was very much a party life until I had my first burnout. And when I had my first burnout, I didn't understand what was going on because I was so disconnected from myself, so disconnected from my body, so disconnected from the signals that my body was sending that I did not read the signs. And your mind will always speak to you through the body. So my mind had been sending me signals that something was not right. I had chronic pain. I had chronic headaches. I had terrible, terrible acne. I had digestive issues. I had issues sleeping. I had dizzy spells. I would be working out and I would pass out. I'd be at my desk typing and I'd pass out. And of course, I had, the worrisome thoughts, the racing mind that didn't stop, the negative self-talk, the really toxic self-battering internal dialogue. All of that was going on, and all of those things were messages from my mind telling me, Faye, something is not right. something has got to come right. You're not paying attention. And because I wasn't paying attention, because I didn't know that my mind was talking to me through these symptoms, one day on my way to work, I passed out behind the wheel of the car and the car went spinning and it ended up on the other side of the road. And when I came to, I was petrified, Asher. I did not understand what had just happened. And I was so afraid of what had just happened and how close I was to totally losing not just control of the car, but like losing my life. And I was so afraid and so ashamed because I couldn't explain it. So I kept quiet about it. And that suffering in silence is probably the worst thing that any of us can do. And part of what happens when our nervous systems go to that place is we end up suffering in silence. We don't seek support. We don't share what's going on. And that suffering in silence actually tends to take your nervous system farther and farther and farther into these chronic freeze, chronic survival states where all of these problems and issues are created and stored. Eventually, with the help of a very dear friend, I was encouraged to go, and get myself checked out. I was very afraid to get myself checked out because I was afraid of what they might find. And at the time, what I thought they might find is something neurological, because I had no other explanation. Like, why would you pass out at the wheel of a car and not know what caused it and not have any recollection of what was leading up to it? But test after test after test after test came back negative. And doctor visit after doctor visit after doctor visit ended up with the doctor saying, I have really good news for you. There's nothing going on. You're perfectly healthy, perfectly fine. And after the 8th doctor's visit and the 8th time of hearing that there's nothing wrong with me and no medical explanation to shed light on why I've been feeling so lousy, I broke down into tears and I told the doctor, but I don't understand. Like, if there's nothing wrong with me, why am I feeling so lousy? Why am I feeling so bad? And thankfully, I had that 8th doctor was a very well-meaning doctor who actually took the time to, look at my face and really talk to me, as a person, not just a case study. And he said, when he was asking me a few questions, he said, you have depression and you have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which was very surprising to me, because I had never really heard those diagnoses before, and certainly not towards myself, because I thought that depression doesn't follow people that are positive and optimistic and see the cup as being half full. I always thought that depression was something that was associated with a pessimist or somebody who's grim and bleak and negative. And because I was completely the opposite, I completely dismissed that depression could be something that could explain my symptoms. But what I quickly came to understand, Asher, is that depression is not a biochemical thing. I'm talking about clinical depression. It's not a biochemical thing, but it's a nervous system state that comes from an overwhelm and an accumulation of adverse life experiences, really overwhelming life experiences that haven't been dealt with and haven't been processed, that eventually cause the system to get stuck in survival mode and to quite literally freeze. And when that happens, not only is that where depression arises, but that's where all the other common ailments that we see nowadays arise. The IBS, the chronic pain, the burnout, the exhaustion, the fibromyalgia, the insomnia, the sense of purposelessness, directionlessness, procrastination, all of these things that so many of us tend to grapple with in the modern West come from that stuck state, from when the nervous system goes into complete overwhelm and complete survival, where the only thing that it knows how to do is to prioritize your respiration and the circulation of your blood, because these are the only two functions that are necessary for the physical survival of your body. And when the system is in that state, it deprioritizes everything else. It deprioritizes digestion and immunity and sleep, certainly joy, certainly, motivation and problem thinking and problem solving. And this is why, if you're struggling with any of these things and you've done a lot or you're trying a lot and nothing really seems to be working or impactful or have a long lasting impact, you need to reverse engineer and go back to looking at what were the conditions, what were the events, what were the life experiences that haven't been processed, that haven't been dealt with, that took the nervous system to that shutdown mode. And most of the time, actually all of the time, those answers are hidden, deeply hidden in the subconscious mind. And you will not be able to access them with your conscious thinking mind. You need to go deeper and do the deeper inner work in order to get those events out of the subconscious mind, out of the nervous system, clean them up so that the brain can then process them in and store them in the appropriate centers, which is the hippocampus, and not the body where they are causing all of the dysregulation and all of the disruption. So this is basically what happened to me. This was the first initial crisis that came up, Asher, all those years ago that forced me to take my life seriously. And here we are 16 years later, helping others do the same for themselves.
You have given us a lot to think about there, Faye. And you spoken just like a true expert in your field. But oftentimes, people connect with maybe that little version of you that you've been keeping a wraps, you've been protecting over the years, that probably taking on some of those heavy things that kind of cause you to trigger you to burn out. So if we had to go back in time, and you mentioned where you grew up at, the island you grew up at, and so forth, and so on, where you actually grew up at. But if we had to go back in time and figure out, like, connect the dots of the person that set you on this journey you're on right now to becoming the person that specializes in what you do right now. If you had to share with us that person who like, hey, I want to be this person in the future. And now the future person say, hey, before you get here, bring that with you from your past. So if you could share with us exactly what that person is.
Yeah, sure. And I think you mentioned something which is very, very important for healing and psychological growth, which is to bring the person from the past into our present so that we can move into the future as one team. Because a lot of time what happens is, one of the reasons why there's such a conflict or such a disconnect between what we want and what we're getting is because there's too much internal conflict that from different parts of us that are still stuck in the old stories and in the old experiences from the past that were very overwhelming. And so in my case, that younger version of myself was still stuck in a war zone, like quite literally in a war zone. So I'm born in Lebanon. I'm Lebanese. I was born right before the start of the Lebanese Civil War of 1975. And that civil war, lasted about 15 years, and it claimed the lives of hundreds of thousands of people. It displaced millions. And I and my family were part of the statistic of the millions that left the country, that left the war zone pretty early. And so the narrative that I always grew up with and that I believed to be true, that the younger versions of myself believed to be true, is that we left the conflict early. We left the chaos early. We're unaffected by the chaos. We're unaffected by the conflict. I was 5.5 when I left.
Mm.
And so this is the narrative that I grew up with for many years, until I had my second burnout. When I had my second burnout, I was in Dubai. At this point, I was 40 years old. And when I had my second burnout, it hit me harder than the first one because I hadn't dealt with the root causes of what led to the first burnout.
Mm.
And so I realized that I had to do much deeper work in order to get out of the second burnout. And that's when I came across this idea of like the subconscious mind. And when I first heard the word subconscious mind, my body lit up and vibrated with energy, because I kind of knew intuitively when I heard that held the key to my healing journey. When I understood that the subconscious mind is the part of our mind that actually stores all the memories, all the life experiences, all of the emotions, all of the thoughts, the values, the phobias, the fears, and the instincts that we're not conscious of with our thinking mind, I'm like, of course, that makes so much sense. So I booked in with a clinical hypnotherapist to help me access my subconscious mind in order to figure out what was causing all of these issues in my adult life. And so, the hypnotherapist at the time, she asked my subconscious mind to travel back to the very, 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 very first time that was responsible for all of the troubles and all of the issues of my adult life. And, Asher, our subconscious mind, because it's the part of our mind that is there to guarantee our survival, it's always, always, always complies with the instructions and with our intentions, because it wants us to survive and it wants us to thrive as well. So it complied. It went back to the time that I was 5 years old. So I went back and revisited the 5-year-old who was fleeing the war zone. And so when this is all shown to me in hypnosis, my subconscious mind is showing me this scene. I'm 5 years old. My little brother, 5.5. Excuse me. My little brother was about 3.5. My little sister was 1.5. And my father was caught outside the country because of the troubles. So my mother was fleeing with 3 young children, the war zone. And she somehow thought that if we flee in the middle of the night, we're less likely to get caught up in sniper fire. But on that fateful night that we were fleeing, about 10 minutes after we left the house, and the ride to the airport was about 35 to 40 minutes, the bombs started. So there were bombs falling in the distance and there was snipers overhead. And our mom, in an attempt to keep us kids safe, she started pushing our heads underneath the seat of the car. And in that moment, I couldn't breathe. And I felt I couldn't breathe. I felt I was going to die. And my system, because it thought that it was going to die, it went into survival mode and it never switched off. It never switched off. So the biochemistry of survival was triggered at the age of 5 and kept going until the age of 40. And this was all revealed to me in hypnosis by my subconscious mind. I had no conscious memory of it at all. The only conscious memory I had is we left the war early. We were unaffected by the conflict. We were unaffected by the chaos. But my biology had a completely different experience than what the brain had. And the biology was stuck in that survival biochemistry for all these years and was creating all of those symptoms that were impacting my mental health and my physical well-being. Now, when I came out of that session, the hypnotherapist was not a very good one, because I had that memory show up, but she didn't do anything to clean up the memory. She didn't do anything to change the memory, right? So the memory remained alive inside of me, this is why we need to do trauma-informed clinical hypnotherapy. You need to work with a trauma-informed person, because you don't want to revivify the trauma and you don't want to re-experience the trauma. That's not what you want to do. That's not what's going to help you get out of the trauma. You need to tell the body, you need to tell the biology that the trauma is over, so that the biology will switch off the biochemistry of stress and survival. So it took me many years to understand that that's what needed to happen, because I wasn't working with anybody qualified. I was making this stuff up as I go along. I was piecing it together for my own healing journey as I went along. And it wasn't until about 6 to 8 months later that I realized what the hypnotherapist had not done well. I had to figure out how to do it for myself. It took me a while. This is why you see all of these degrees and diplomas behind me, because I was studying and researching and doing training. And
were you a therapist at the time too?
No, not at all. I was still a party girl. I was a party girl. My career back then was training and education and training. That's what I was doing. That's what I loved. So I was just doing this on the side, like figuring out how to be healthy for myself, because the doctors weren't helping me. The therapists weren't helping me. The psychologists weren't helping me. And I certainly wasn't going to go on medication. So I had to figure it out for myself. And so in response to your question about the younger versions of me that are now very much part of who I am, there's that 5-year-old who was so petrified and thought she was going to die in the car is very much now not just part of me, but part of what I do and part of my mission of helping others come together with all parts of themselves by integrating their life experiences into one whole so that they can move forward in their future. Because, our brains are made up of our 5-year-old and our 2-year-old and our 3-month-old and our 12-year-old and our 20-year-old and, all of the ages until our current age. And just by dismissing or ignoring or denying or pretending that one part of us isn't as important as the other, that actually causes internal fracture. That causes internal limitation. And it's not only until we return to a wholeness with all aspects of who we are, all the ages, all our life experience, that we can really, really, really heal. Because really healing, what it means is wholeness.
So if I had to ask you this question, just kind of narrow down and say if somebody listening to this right now, like who you want to be a hero to or shira to? Like if you had to describe that person that you would like to be a hero to, the person that you would bring that solution to their situation, who would that person be right now?
So I just want to make sure that I understand your question, Asher. Who do I want to be to the person listening, or who do I want to be to myself?
No, to the, so right now, based on your specialty, and somebody would like, hey, I would like to have you as the person that provide some kind of specialty to, but they need to know exactly who those people are. So if I ask the question, like, who in the world that you would like to be a hero to, based on your skill set, your specialty, who would those people be?
All right. Okay. So the people that I work with are very much actually people like the younger versions of myself who are struggling in silence. The younger versions of myself who know that there's something not right, but they can't really figure out what it is, or they're too afraid, or they're in this internal battle with themselves because externally their life is good. They have a good job. They have a good quality of life, good standard of living, good, partner. They go on holidays, like when I had my birth, my life was really, really good externally. Right. And so there's this internal battle. I should be grateful because externally I have everything. Why am I not feeling okay on the inside? Why do I feel like there's something missing? There's something broken. There's something wrong. There's something unwhole. They're the people who have symptoms that are so chronic and frustrating and limiting, and yet the medical profession can't really provide explanations for. They're people who have tried everything, who have done the meditation, who have downloaded the apps, who do their diaphragmatic breaths, who have gone to see the osteopaths and the naturopaths and the physiotherapists and the massage therapists, who have changed their diet and still are tired, they're wired, they're uninspired, their sleep is not on track, they're anxious, they have pains that they can't explain. Those are the people I want to speak to, and I speak to in my clinic every day. And I know I can help get back on track with my 3-step mental health blueprint, which I developed over the course of my own healing journey when nothing else really worked for me. And now, 16 years later, Asher, 16 years later, I'm able to put together a step-by-step plan, a step-by-step process that provides you with a pathway forward, with support, accountability, community, guidance, and resources that I wish somebody could have offered me when I was suffering in silence for all these years. It took me 16 years because I didn't know what I was doing. I know that if I had this plan that I now offer my clients, it would have taken me so much less. And right now, with the plan that I have for my clients, it's 3 months or less. And I guarantee that you will overcome poor mental health, exhaustion, and pain without meditation, without medication and talk therapy in 3 months or less. And this has been, the track record has been fail proof and consistently satisfactory for the past 6 years. And I offer full money back refunds, full money back guarantees on all my work. And I've never had to issue a refund in six years, ever.
Here's the thing, though. You see, those people that are suffering in silence, oftentimes it's very difficult for them to reach out. So if they are having difficulty reaching out, how would you reach in and get them to reach out to you?
Well, I'll tell you, I think that, because I hear it from they've probably heard something today. Sorry. They probably heard something today that either they hadn't heard before or really makes a lot of sense or makes them think, okay, what about this? And it's a feeling, it's an intuition that they'll get about maybe this is something else that I've missed and that I need to explore and pay attention to, because there's something about what I heard that makes sense and intuitively resonates with me.
Wow. Faye, you have educated me today, by the way.
Well, I mean, every day we learn every day, don't we? And I offer, and just to take the uncertainty away and the hesitation away, I offer 30-minute complimentary consultations, to talk through what's happening for you and to help you map out a way forward. And that's done online via Zoom, so we could do it anywhere in the world. I've got clients from all over the world. I work across time zones. So just reach out. If you want to have a chat, just reach out. Faye at FayeLawands.com.
Okay, best place to reach you. Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Faye at FayeLawands.com, and we'll get you started.
Wow. Okay, we have traveled on this journey. I think the big sign on the bus, they saw the bus, they get on the bus. Now they went to a couple stops. Now they're at the destination right now. We're going to close out with your story, with your journey. But my last question before we even tap out.
Yes.
What is that one thing or two things that people do that drive you crazy?
Oh my God. Okay. So blaming others. It's everybody else's fault. Nothing, the blaming others and pointing the finger at others, literally drives me bonkers. And the other thing that I really don't appreciate is not making eye contact. I find more and more people, and I think this is symptomatic of our of a society that's constantly on the go. People don't stop and actually look at your face when you're talking to them. Actually listen to what you have to say. Actually pay attention to what you're saying in your body language, and that inability to actually be present in a conversation, pay attention and look at my face when I'm talking to you, really, really irritates me.
Wow. Faye, thank you so much for sharing. And it was a pleasure.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for what you do and what you're bringing to the world.
Of course. What I do is I collect stories and I circulate life-changing wisdom, and I find solutions that people have and share with the world so people can solve their problem. Because one of my favorite quotes by Dan Sullivan, I love this one, he says, the problem is not the problem, but you're thinking about the problem is the problem. So all the time, the way we think about the problem makes it a problem. And sometimes we just need a person that has the resources or the way of thinking about a problem that make the problem no longer a problem. But we just don't know who those people are. all that kind of thinking. So I appreciate you sharing exactly what.
Oh, it's my
work
pleasure,
with.
Asher. My pleasure. Thanks for having me on, and I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a happy 2024, you and your listeners, and all those that you care about.
Hey, of course, you're now tuned into the Pandora's Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. Now make it an awesome day.